Imagine this. You're at the pinnacle of your life. Wealth, power, respect, you have it all. But one day, your entire world is threatened by a single question. Is the person you love most hiding a secret that could destroy everything? This is the story of a mogul, a man who had it all, until he made a vow that would change his life forever. He swore he'd leave his wife if she wasn't pure, a promise that seemed simple at the time. But little did he know, it would unravel a truth so shocking, it would leave him questioning everything he thought he knew about love, trust, and the people closest to him. Now I know what you're thinking. What does pure even mean? And why would someone make such a drastic ultimatum? Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll have all the answers. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about a wealthy man and his wife. It's a story about the secrets we keep, the lies we tell, and the lengths we go to protect the ones we love. It's about the moment when the truth comes crashing down and you're left to pick up the pieces. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where you thought you knew someone inside and out, only to discover they weren't who you thought they were? That moment of realization, it's like the ground beneath you disappears, right? That's exactly what happened to our mogul. And today, I'm going to take you on a journey through his story, a journey filled with twists, turns, and revelations that will keep you on the edge of your seat. But before we dive in, let's talk about you. Yes, you. Why are you here? What made you click on this video? Maybe you're drawn to stories about power and betrayal. Maybe you're curious about the secrets people hide behind closed doors. Or maybe, just maybe, you've been in a situation where you questioned the purity of a relationship, not in the way our mogul did, but in your own way. Whatever the reason, I want you to know this. You're in the right place. Because by the time this story ends, you'll not only have the answers you're looking for, but you'll also walk away with something deeper, a new perspective on love, trust, and the complexities of human relationships. Now, let's set the stage. Picture a sprawling mansion nestled in the hills of Beverly Hills. The kind of place where the walls are lined with priceless art, the floors are polished marble, and every room feels like it belongs in a magazine. This is the home of Alexander Grant, a self-made billionaire who built his empire from the ground up. He's the kind of man who commands respect wherever he goes, charismatic, powerful, and fiercely protective of his legacy. But behind the glitz and glamour, there's a man who's deeply insecure, haunted by a past that shaped his every decision. And then there's Sophia, his wife. Beautiful, elegant, and seemingly perfect in every way. She's the kind of woman who turns heads when she walks into a room, but there's more to her than meets the eye. Sophia has her own secrets, her own struggles, and her own reasons for staying in a marriage that's far from perfect. The story begins with a seemingly innocent conversation, one that spirals into a confrontation that changes everything. Alexander, driven by his own demons, makes a vow that shocks even himself. He tells Sophia that if she isn't pure, he'll leave her. It's a word loaded with meaning, a word that carries the weight of his insecurities and his past. But what does it really mean? And why does it matter so much to him? As the days turn into weeks, Alexander becomes consumed by doubt. He starts to notice little things that make him question everything he thought he knew about Sophia. A missed call here, a cryptic text there, a late-night meeting she can't explain. The more he digs, the more he uncovers, until he's faced with a truth so shocking, it threatens to destroy everything he's built. But here's the thing, this isn't just a story about Alexander and Sophia. It's a story about us. About the masks we wear, the lies we tell, and the truths we're afraid to face. It's about the moment when the person you love most becomes a stranger, and you're left to decide, do you fight for the relationship, or do you walk away? So what happens next? What is the truth that Alexander uncovers? And how does it change everything? I promise you, the answers are coming. But before we get there, I want you to think about this. What would you do if you were in Alexander's shoes? If you discovered a secret that shattered everything you thought you knew about the person you love, would you stay or would you go? Stay tuned because this story is about to take a turn you won't see coming. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end. Because the truth? It's more shocking than you could ever imagine. And on a cliffhanger, but just when Alexander thought he had all the answers, he discovered something that changed everything. Alexander Grant wasn't always the man he appeared to be. Born into a working-class family in a small Midwestern town, he had grown up with nothing but ambition and a relentless drive to prove himself. His father, a factory worker, had always told him, "The world doesn't owe you anything, son. If you want something, you've got to take it." Those words had become Alexander's mantra, fueling his rise from a scrappy young entrepreneur to one of the most powerful men in the country. But success came at a cost. The same drive that had built his empire had also left him isolated, suspicious, and haunted by the fear of losing everything he had worked so hard to achieve. His marriage to Sophia, a former model turned philanthropist, had been his anchor, a symbol of the life he had always dreamed of. But now, that anchor was slipping, and he could feel the ground crumbling beneath him. Sophia, on the other hand, had her own story, one that Alexander had never fully understood. She had grown up in a world of privilege, but it was a world filled with expectations and pressures that had shaped her in ways she rarely spoke about. Her beauty had always been her currency, but it had also been her curse. Men had pursued her for her looks, but few had ever taken the time to see the woman behind the smile. When she met Alexander, she had been drawn to his intensity, his determination, and the way he seemed to see her as more than just a pretty face. But over the years, the cracks in their relationship had begun to show. Alexander's obsession with control and his constant need for reassurance had worn her down, and she had started to retreat into herself, hiding parts of her life that she knew he would never understand. The tension between them had been building for months, but it all came to a head one evening during a charity gala at their mansion. Alexander, already on edge after a long day of meetings, had noticed Sophia talking to a man he didn't recognize. The man was handsome, confident, and seemed to be hanging on Sophia's every word. Alexander's jealousy, always simmering just beneath the surface, had boiled over. Later that night, in the privacy of their bedroom, he had confronted her. "Who was that man?" he had demanded, his voice cold and accusing. Sophia had tried to explain he was an old friend, someone she had known from her modeling days, but Alexander hadn't believed her. That was when he had made the vow, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "If you're not pure, Sophia, if you've betrayed me in any way, I'll leave you. I swear it." The word pure had hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. For Alexander, it wasn't just about fidelity. It was about control, about ensuring that Sophia was exactly who he thought she was. But for Sophia, it was a slap in the face, a reminder that no matter how much she gave, it would never be enough. She had looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of hurt and defiance, and said nothing. That silence had been the beginning of the end. In the weeks that followed, Alexander became consumed by suspicion. He hired a private investigator to dig into Sophia's past, convinced that she was hiding something. What he found was a web of secrets that went far deeper than he had imagined. There were bank accounts he didn't know about, phone calls to numbers he didn't recognize, and a series of meetings with a man named Daniel Carter, a name that sent a chill down Alexander's spine. Daniel was a journalist known for his exposés on the rich and powerful. What could Sophia possibly want with him? As Alexander dug deeper, he began to uncover fragments of a story that didn't make sense. There were photos of Sophia meeting with Daniel in secluded locations, cryptic notes in her handwriting, and a series of emails that hinted at something much bigger than an affair. But what? Alexander's mind raced with possibilities. Was Sophia planning to leave him? Was she working with Daniel to expose him in some way? Or was there something else going on, something even more dangerous? Meanwhile, Sophia was struggling with her own demons. She had always known that Alexander's love came with conditions, but she had never imagined it would come to this. The truth was, she had been keeping secrets, but not the kind Alexander suspected. Her meetings with Daniel weren't about betrayal. They were about survival. Years ago, before she had met Alexander, Sophia had been involved in a scandal that had nearly destroyed her career. It was a chapter of her life she had tried to bury, but now it was coming back to haunt her. Daniel had uncovered the story, and he was threatening to go public unless she helped him with a story of his own, a story that involved Alexander. Sophia was trapped. If she told Alexander the truth, she risked losing him forever. But if she didn't, she risked losing everything else. As the days passed, the pressure became unbearable. She started to withdraw, spending hours alone in the garden, staring at the roses she had planted when they first moved into the mansion. They had been a symbol of their love, but now they felt like a reminder of everything that was slipping away. And then there was the other man, the one Alexander had seen her talking to at the gala. His name was Marcus, and he was an old friend, but he was also something more. Marcus had been there for Sophia during some of the darkest moments of her life, and now he was the only person she felt she could trust. But their friendship was a double-edged sword. The more time she spent with Marcus, the more Alexander's suspicions grew. The tension between them reached a breaking point one stormy night. Alexander, unable to sleep, had gone to his study to pore over the investigator's report one more time. That was when he found a photo of Sophia and Marcus, taken just days earlier. They were sitting in a cafe, their heads close together, their expressions serious. Alexander's heart pounded as he stared at the image, his mind racing with questions. What were they talking about? What were they planning? And why had Sophia lied to him about Marcus? He stormed into their bedroom, the photo in hand, and confronted her. Who is he, Sophia? And don't tell me he's just a friend. I know there's more to this. Sophia, exhausted and desperate, had tried to explain, but Alexander wasn't listening. The trust between them, already fragile, had shattered. But just when Alexander thought he had all the answers, he discovered something that changed everything. Hidden in the back of Sophia's closet, he found a box filled with letters that told a story he had never expected. They were from Daniel, but they weren't love letters. They were threats, demands, and warnings. As Alexander read through them, a chilling realization began to dawn on him. Sophia wasn't the one betraying him. She was trying to protect him. But from what? And at what cost? The answers were closer than he thought, but they would come at a price. Because the truth, as Alexander was about to discover, was far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. And it would force him to make a choice, one that would change his life forever. It was something much darker. Something that would test everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and the lengths we go to protect the ones we love. The storm outside mirrored the tempest raging in Alexander's mind as he sat in his study. The letters from Daniel spread out before him. Each word was a dagger, cutting through the layers of suspicion and anger that had clouded his judgment. The truth was staring him in the face, but it was a truth he wasn't ready to accept. Sophia hadn't been betraying him. She had been trying to shield him from a danger he hadn't even known existed. But what was that danger? And why had she kept it from him? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more unsettling than the last. As he read through the letters again, a pattern began to emerge. Daniel wasn't just threatening Sophia, he was blackmailing her. The scandal from her past, the one she had tried so hard to bury, wasn't just about her. It involved Alexander too. Years ago, when he was still building his empire, Alexander had made deals with people who operated in the shadows. He had told himself it was necessary, that the ends justified the means. But now, those deals were coming back to haunt him. Daniel had uncovered evidence of corruption, lies, and secrets that could destroy not just Alexander's reputation, but his entire empire. And he was using Sophia as leverage to get what he wanted. Alexander's hands trembled as he realized the magnitude of what was at stake. This wasn't just about his marriage. It was about his life's work, his legacy, everything he had fought so hard to build. And Sophia, in her own way, had been trying to protect him. She had been meeting with Daniel, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. She had been trying to negotiate, to find a way out that wouldn't destroy them both. But Daniel wasn't the kind of man who could be reasoned with. He was a predator, and he had his sights set on Alexander. The realization hit Alexander like a punch to the gut. All this time, he had been so focused on his own fears, his own insecurities, that he had failed to see what was really happening. Sophia hadn't been the enemy. She had been the one fighting for them. And now, because of his mistrust, he had pushed her away. He had accused her, doubted her, and made her feel like she was the one who had betrayed him. The guilt was overwhelming, but there was no time to dwell on it. He had to act, and he had to act fast. But just as Alexander was about to confront Sophia, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Marcus, the man he had seen her with, wasn't just an old friend. He was a private investigator, one of the best in the business. Sophia had hired him to help her navigate the mess Daniel had created. Together, they had been working to uncover the full extent of Daniel's plans, to find a way to stop him before it was too late. But Marcus had warned Sophia that time was running out. Daniel was getting impatient, and if they didn't act soon, he would go public with everything he had. Alexander's mind raced as he tried to process this new information. Sophia had been working behind the scenes trying to protect him, but she had been doing it alone. She hadn't trusted him enough to tell him the truth, and he couldn't blame her. He had given her every reason to doubt him. But now, they were running out of time. If they didn't come up with a plan, Daniel would destroy them both. The tension between Alexander and Sophia reached a boiling point that night. He found her in the garden, sitting on the bench where they had shared so many quiet moments. The roses, once a symbol of their love, now seemed to mock him. He approached her cautiously, the letters in his hand. "Sophia," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I know," she said. "I should have told you sooner. But I was scared, Alexander. Scared of what you would do, scared of what you would think of me." Alexander sat down beside her, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I've been so blind, so selfish. I should have trusted you. But I need you to trust me now. We're in this together, and we need to figure out how to stop Daniel before it's too late." Sophia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I've been trying," she said. "But Daniel, he's not going to stop. He wants to ruin you, Alexander. And he's willing to destroy me in the process." As they sat there, the storm raging around them, Alexander realized that this was their moment of truth. They could either let Daniel tear them apart, or they could fight back. But fighting back would mean confronting the darkest parts of their past, the secrets they had both tried to bury. It would mean risking everything: their marriage, their reputation, their future. But just as they were beginning to form a plan, an unexpected twist threw everything into chaos. Marcus called Sophia with urgent news. Daniel had been digging deeper than they had realized, and he had uncovered something even more explosive, a secret that not even Sophia had known about. It was a secret that could change everything, a secret that would force Alexander and Sophia to confront a truth they had both been running from. The stakes had never been higher. The clock was ticking, and the danger was closer than they had ever imagined. But as they stood there, facing the storm together, Alexander and Sophia knew one thing for certain: they couldn't do this alone. They would have to trust each other, to fight for each other, or they would lose everything. And on a cliffhanger, as the storm raged on, Alexander and Sophia prepared to face their greatest challenge yet. But little did they know, the secret Daniel had uncovered was about to change everything, and not in the way they had expected. The storm outside had reached its peak, the wind howling like a wounded animal as rain lashed against the windows of the Grant mansion. Inside, the tension was palpable, a silent storm of its own brewing between Alexander and Sophia. They sat in the dimly lit study, the letters from Daniel scattered across the table, their contents a ticking time bomb that threatened to obliterate everything they had built. Marcus's urgent call had left them reeling, the revelation of a deeper secret hanging over them like a guillotine. Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched her phone, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Marcus said Daniel found something about your father," she said, her eyes searching Alexander's for a reaction. Alexander froze, his breath catching in his throat. His father, a man he had idolized, A man who had taught him the value of hard work and integrity was at the center of this? It didn't make sense. But as Marcus's words echoed in his mind, a chilling realization began to take shape. Years ago, when Alexander was just a boy, his father had been involved in a scandal of his own. A scandal that had been buried so deep, no one had ever spoken of it. Daniel had unearthed it, and now he was ready to use it as the final blow to destroy Alexander's legacy. The room felt suffocating as Alexander and Sophia pieced together the fragments of the past. Alexander's father had made a deal with a powerful businessman, one that had crossed ethical and legal boundaries. That deal had laid the foundation for the Grand Empire, but it had also left a trail of corruption that Daniel was now exploiting. The truth was devastating, but it was also liberating. For the first time, Alexander understood why his father had always been so hard on him, why he had pushed him to be better, to be stronger. It wasn't just about ambition, it was about redemption. His father had been trying to right his wrongs through Alexander's success. But understanding the past wasn't enough. They had to act, and they had to act now. Sophia, her resolve steeled by the gravity of the situation, laid out a plan. "We need to go public before Daniel does," she said. "If we control the narrative, we can minimize the damage. We'll admit to the mistakes, but we'll also show how far we've come. We'll show them that we're not the same people we were back then." Alexander hesitated, the weight of his pride pressing down on him. Going public meant exposing his family's darkest secrets, but it also meant taking back control. It meant showing the world that he was more than his father's mistakes, more than the lies that had shaped his life. He looked at Sophia, her strength and determination shining through the fear, and he knew she was right. They couldn't run from the truth anymore. They had to face it head-on. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity. They called a press conference, their team working tirelessly to prepare a statement that was honest but not damning. Marcus, ever the professional, provided them with evidence to counter Daniel's claims. Proof that while the past was flawed, the present was built on integrity and hard work. As they stood before the cameras, the storm outside finally beginning to subside, Alexander felt a strange sense of calm. This was his moment of reckoning, his chance to rewrite the narrative. But just as they were about to begin, an unexpected twist unfolded. Daniel, who'd been lurking in the shadows, stepped forward. He had been watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But instead of delivering the final blow, he did something no one saw coming. He apologized. Daniel's voice was steady as he addressed the crowd. "I came here to destroy Alexander Grant," he said. "But in digging into his past, I found something I wasn't expecting. I found a man who has spent his entire life trying to outrun the mistakes of his father. A man who, despite his flaws, has built something remarkable. And I realized that destroying him wouldn't just be wrong, it would be a disservice to everyone who believes in second chances." The room fell silent, the weight of Daniel's words hanging in the air. Alexander, stunned but grateful, stepped forward. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us, about the mistakes we make and the lessons we learn. It's about owning our past and using it to build a better future." The press conference ended with a standing ovation, the crowd moved by the raw honesty and vulnerability on display. But for Alexander and Sophia, the real victory was in the quiet moments that followed. As they walked back to their car, hand in hand, they knew they had faced their greatest challenge and come out stronger on the other side. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. The secrets that had haunted them were no longer chains but lessons, reminders of how far they had come. And as they drove home, the first rays of sunlight breaking through the clouds, Alexander and Sophia knew one thing for certain. They had faced the truth, and it had set them free. And with a reflective note, sometimes the hardest truths to face are the ones that set us free. Alexander and Sophia's story is a reminder that no matter how dark the storm, there's always a chance for redemption, for love, and for a new beginning.